Chad, maybe it's just me and it's my problem, but I remember a day in time when everyone knew who the head coach of the Boston Celtics was.
Yeah, that was one of the preeminent coaching positions, right? Yankees manager, Boston Celtics, Green Bay Packers head coach, Dallas
Brad
Cowboys
Stevens
head
went.
coach.
I mean, it was prominent then.
Notre Dame head coach. I'm trying to think of the big positions in sports.
Good for Joe Mazzulla, a name you probably didn't know. He's now the full-time head coach of the Boston Celtics. He took over for Ime Udoka, and as the interim, he had the interim tag removed, big contract says he's 34 years old, and he's led the Boston Celtics to a record of 42-17 currently. Fantastic job. He deserves this, and I can't wait to follow what he does. Again, 34 years old. He's the head coach of the Boston Celtics.
It's not bad. It's also, man, I look at the Celtics deal now with Brad Stevens moving up into the front office and handing it over to Udoka, who did really well, and now Mazzulla's doing really well. I'm not going to say the thing is on autopilot, but they've just got a hell of an organization right now going. And that started with Danny Ainge. I mean, Danny Ainge hiring Stevens, Danny Ainge sort of leaving or being a consultant or whatever he's doing, then Stevens moving up to front office. It's a well-oiled machine of a family right now with the Celtics that, and I'm not saying you could put anyone in there, but Mazzulla was clearly a part of that culture and knew what to do, and he was handed the baton and kept running with it and has done really well. I also keep going back to, it's crazy to me that they fired Udoka the way they did.
Yeah.
It just didn't seem like something that was that much of a fireable offense at the time, considering everything was consensual.
Right.
But, I don't look, good for the Celtics that seemingly it doesn't matter who's in that chair. They continue to roll right along. They're in a really good spot. And I thought the whole Brad Stevens thing was weird to me. When he stopped coaching, I'm thinking, is he going to get out and go back to college? And no, he wants to be Danny Ainge.
Yeah.
And that's a great job. If you don't want the stress of coaching anymore and you can be, the guy who's pulling making the moves over the coach also, there are worse gigs.
So former Celtic and champion Paul Pierce, he's been fined by the SEC and the Securities and Exchange Commission because if you've noticed on social, the hashtag ad, if a player or anyone is promoting something, he did not do that. He did not disclose that he was promoting a crypto on his social media as an ad instead of just a personal endorsement. And he has agreed to pay a $1.1 million fine plus another $240,000 of ill-gotten gains plus interest. This all according to the New York Post. This is, if you're familiar with the name CoffeeZilla on YouTube, if you're not, watch his stuff. CoffeeZilla is he investigates, he reports on crypto and online fraud.
Wow.
And scams.
I was not familiar with this person.
He dives into it deep. Like, he figures things out based on usernames and how it's connected to certain people and scams on social media to get you to sign up to buy it while they're about to sell it as it peaks. Logan and Jake Paul are prominent on his channel for investigations. You can find many more, too. This is another interesting development because a lot of this are celebrities who put out, like, can't wait to get involved in this new crypto. And they just put the link out there without the ad. And this is the SEC cracking down on at least Paul Pierce in this.
And he pretty quickly said, yeah, I'll pay it. There's no fighting this. That tells you something.
No doubt. Others probably not getting their money back either. Justin Fields, he wants a dome. We'll discuss.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking it's going to be practicing the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Just like that, the second hour is here. Outkick 360 across the Outkick Network. Glad you're with us. Hutton and Withrow with you. Jordan Schultz from The Score, NFL Insider. He'll be with us coming up in about 20 minutes. We'll hit some of the headlines, which include Derek Carr and his upcoming visit this evening with the New York Jets.
What does Jordan Schultz not cover? Because I feel like the first time we ever had him on one of our shows, Hutton, he talked NBA.
Yeah,
there was NBA news he was breaking.
He's very
and then we had him on again
to
talk Ndamukong Suh news. He's connected a lot of different places.
No doubt.
He's definitely mainly NFL, but I feel like he's reported on a lot of sports.
Always a great visit with him.
Yeah.
Jordan with us in 20 minutes. Some of the headlines out there today. Aaron Jones, running back for the Packers, expected to be a free agent. No, he's agreed to a restructured deal. $11 million. They've reworked that contract. He's going to make $11 million this upcoming season. He'll remain a Green Bay Packer in the backfield. Who's going to be his quarterback? Remains to be seen. But, you know, it's an interesting – the point that no one's making is, what if Aaron Rodgers emerges from this darkness retreat and says, you know what, I want to remain a Green Bay Packer? Are the Packers mentally done with Aaron Rodgers as Aaron Rodgers tries to mentally prepare for what he wants to do next? Are they ready to just say, you know what, no, we're going to move on from Jordan Love? Or do you have to respect that and say, yeah, we'd like to have you back. Let's load up and go? Because that's how they've treated it the last 2 years.
They would be shocked if that was his answer. But I think their answer to that would be, let's go.
But you've got to where they are cap-wise, they have to rework his contract too.
Yeah, let's rework it. Let's talk business now. Do you really want to win? Because if you want that,
let's go.
We're going to have to rework a lot of things, and then we'll go do everything we can to help you win a Super Bowl, right? I mean, that's the response to me. Now, if Aaron Rodgers says, I'm not reworking a thing, then okay, you're traded. You know, that's probably the Packers' response to that. Because I'm with you, Hutton. They have to have just moved on mentally, thinking we got to find a trade partner with this team.
Even after they paid him.
Yeah, we got to find a trade partner. We got to figure out our future. We got to figure out if we're going to have someone else at quarterback or if Jordan Love is the answer. So they're definitely thinking that. If Aaron Rodgers says, I want to stay a Packer, that's the next response from the Packers. Then let's rework it. Let's get some cap flexibility. Let's figure out a way to help you around you so we can make another run. That would be the conversation, I think.
It was tough for some players to run at Super Bowl 57 on that turf. The turf developers, which have been widely discussed this week from Oklahoma State on this Tahoma 31 whatever, the grass that they use, that they developed, that they use on golf courses. The turf developers are blaming the NFL, not their overall research with this, which spent a ton of money on the scientists that developed and patented this Tahoma 31 grass. The quote is to the Tulsa World that they had no role in creating or preparing the field for Super Bowl 57. Tahoma 31 was used for the base layer, but the field was also seeded with a top layer of ryegrass, which has slick leaf surfaces when damp. That and other factors may have contributed to the traction issues during play.
So let me...
The statement also says that Tahoma 31 is used at Lincoln Financial Field.
Which you have mentioned before as a problem. Let me give you a little analogy here. If we do this show and a mic doesn't work because the mic company screwed something up within the mic, or the internet here goes down,
it's Matt's
and there's
problem.
Nothing we can do about it, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing that Outkick or Fox could have done about it, but that happened. Who's going to get the tweets about our show not being on? Who's going to get the emails and the calls about something going wrong? Is it going to be the company that made this mic? Or is it going to be people tweeting us at Outkick about the show being off the air? Who's going to get the blame for it? My point is, this is the NFL's problem. They can talk about different breeds of grass and all the things that went wrong with the company and the research the company did and all of that. This is the NFL and this is the Super Bowl. If something is screwed up, it's not your vendor's fault. It's not who you hired. They are the NFL. When you hire them, they are representing you. You are them. You are one and the same. You don't get to respond to hate tweets by saying it's all on them. Nothing we could do about it. It's on you. Just like if something goes wrong here, it's on us. We can talk about it all day and say what happened, but ultimately, even if we can do nothing about it, people are going to blame us. That's the way it works when it's your product. The Super Bowl is your product. It's not, what's the name of the research or the grass or whatever? It's
Tahoma 31.
It's not Nahoma 31's problem. It's the NFL's problem, period.
Well,
so
they've had
make
this problem
all the excuses
before.
you want. It doesn't matter.
Even on turf, they've had this problem in Canton where they paint the thing and then they can't play the game because it's slick. But that game you can cancel. This one you can't. And there's an issue when the kicker can't kick off well.
To me, it just goes right back to Park Avenue in New York. That's where the problem ends. I mean, again, things happen. You know, there are things that are out of your control. This was in their control. They let someone else take control of it, and it bit them in the backside. And now they want to point fingers, but it's ultimately on the NFL, and it's not a national emergency. The game is over. There were no huge injuries because of it. That slick surface produced a great game. So the NFL ultimately is happy. I mean, people are talking about one of the best Super Bowls ever, high scoring, went down to the last second field goal. That part of it was great. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't want to hear about this from them. I don't want to hear about excuses from them. Just own it, say you'll be better, we'll figure it out for the next one, and move on because you had a great Super Bowl, a good season, and that's all that matters.
Chicago Bears quarterback Justin Fields doesn't want to play on grass. He wants to play on turf. He wants a dome. This coming after the Bears have finalized the acquisition for Arlington Heights, the racetrack, which is going to be the future home of the Chicago Bears Stadium. And they've released some renderings, and everything looks great. Fields is asking, hey, I'd love to play in a dome, not outside in the weather and all the conditions. And all I can think about, Chad, is week 1, Justin Fields against Trey Lance, San Francisco at Chicago, and the awful conditions, which, I mean, that wasn't the only game that produced those weather conditions. Justin Fields kept them in games single-handedly. They have the number 1 overall pick with close losses. Those don't count. There are no moral victories. But without him, it could have been a lot worse with the way he led the team and, I mean, outpaced a lot of teams in rushing, even backs in rushing. And the former top draft pick for the Bears a couple of years ago is now saying, hey, put me in a dome so I can compete at the highest level every single week. I'd love that, given the circumstances I'm playing with. He'd also love an offensive line upgrade and help at wide receiver.
I agree with what he's saying, and I understand the reasoning. I hate that he's saying it for this reason. We had Brian Urlacher on last week at the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
We talked to Brian Urlacher about this, and he said, it's just not Bears football. You're supposed to play in the elements. Our fans enjoy that part of it. You know, they tolerate it. They know that it's part of being a Chicago Bears fan is you're going to have 2-3 games a year that's going to be miserable from a weather standpoint or a cold standpoint or a wind standpoint. And we relish with that with the Bears. And being if you're a lifelong Bears fan or you're a big part of the organization like Brian Urlacher, those guys relish that. So I hear that and I think, well, of course, any quarterback wants perfect conditions and perfect footing and all of that at all times. But I don't want the Chicago Bears quarterback saying that. And I think Justin Fields is the Chicago Bears quarterback. Maybe he's repeating a company line knowing they're going to be indoors, and he's just saying what they want him to say. But I'd prefer him say, you know, hey, this is part of the Bears organization. This is part of our history. Is playing in some of the craziest weather games in the history of the NFL. I'm happy to be a part of that, and ended it there. Again, I understand what he's saying. I know why he's saying it. I just wish he didn't if I'm a Bears fan.
And you're right. It's the oldest stadium in the league. Having been there, don't trust the temperature on outside. The wind coming in, it's Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Chicago. Some of the coldest games I've been outside for, and it was like 50 degrees that day in Chicago, but freezing on the field based on the conditions. You can use that to your advantage. Buffalo comes to mind too. Don't put a dome in the new stadium in Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Josh Allen said, you know, I really want to play in a dome. This is bad. These conditions up here in Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
I'd prefer a dome for the rest of my career. I'd hate that even worse. But I hate hearing that from Justin Fields. And maybe I'm too old school on this, but I think of certain places. You've been there, Hutton, and you talked about the wind cutting you like a knife in these places.
Yeah.
You talked about, you know, your hands and your phone freezing in Kansas City. Kansas City, Buffalo, Chicago, Green Bay. When I say those places in the NFL, the first thing that comes to mind is not 72 degrees and sunny. It is freezing, it is windy, it is snowy, it is a pain in the ass for another team to come in there and play you. And it's an advantage for the home team in those settings, or at least it's supposed to be. I know it's not always the case, and guys don't always want to play in that. I get it. But I love that part of the NFL, and I love that part of those franchises.
And maybe some are saying, like, oh, maybe he wants to be traded. Maybe they're going to trade him. Look, they have roughly right now around $100 million in cap space, the Chicago Bears do. What were we talking about 8 months ago? If you look at all the second and third year quarterbacks and the investment around them, the team that did the least for the Chicago Bears around Justin Fields. It's time to invest in him and around him the same way we've seen other teams in the NFC, AFC invest in their young quarterbacks and see what he can do before you punt him and try to draft one of the other young quarterbacks. Because if you're not going to invest in the new young quarterback, what's the point of, laying up with Justin Fields after you've already traded to go get him a couple of years ago?
Yeah, look, Justin Fields has not been given a fair hand in Chicago so far, and I look at him as the jury is very much out. I could see him having a Daniel Jones-type breakthrough season, maybe next year, but very soon. So I think he can do really well in the league. I also don't think he's in a place of power in terms of leverage.
No.
Right now where he could say, hey, you guys have mistreated me. I want to get traded. Look, I've said it before. It would not shock me if a Panthers or a Colts or someone traded up to number 1 because they were that in love with Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud and drafted them number 1, and then the Bears would be moving on. The Bears then would be, married to Justin Fields. In that scenario, I've never really thought about a Justin Fields trade, right? And them drafting one of these guys number 1. Nothing shocks me, but what they would get in return, I just don't know that it makes sense other than building up the offense around Justin Fields and giving him a fair shake.
And you've got Ryan Poles, who came in from Kansas City and has been maneuvering the roster, making trades, freeing up cap space for this year. This is the year where you can actually invest in your overall young roster and take advantage of your young quarterback who's on a rookie salary, right? Like that's the other point here. They can really improve around him and take advantage of a guy who's already rushing for 1,200 yards. Set the single game rushing record this season from the quarterback position. I hope they do that more than they do throw in the towel on Justin Fields to this point. Matthew Slater, the special teams ace, he is back for his 16th season, making a career on kick and punt coverage, as well as the return game.
I always think about 2 guys when I think about special teams aces. Bill Bates, former Tennessee Vol with the Cowboys for years, and a guy we just had on, Steve Tasker of the Bills. Slater's that guy. To build a career on special teams the way he has is impressive. 16 years, even more impressive, so kudos to him.
Tiger Woods finished his round today in the tournament through 2 rounds. He's +1, and that puts him 1 shot below the cut line currently. He was in the morning group after being in the afternoon group in round 1, finishes round 2, and for the tournament at Riviera in the Genesis Invitational, +1 after bogeying the 18th hole, which for him was the 9th hole on the course. I hope he makes the cut. I hope the crop of golfers comes back down to him. Chances are better conditions in the afternoon are not going to allow that.
I'm still encouraged by that performance.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been great to see him over the weekend, but what he was able to do yesterday, he tapered off, physically, late in the round today, I'm sure, with some of those bogeys. But overall, I'm impressed that he got through the 2 rounds, didn't have to, leave after 1 round and not come back or any of that. Now, the next step is let's see him in all 4 rounds in a tournament coming up and see how that goes.
Chad, I've added on Netflix in my watch list, Full Swing, the Netflix 8-part series, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Episode series on PGA, LIV, and the behind-the-scenes aspect of what's been the last, a year and a half?
Yeah.
Of the golf experience.
It's really
good.
Have
you seen episode 1?
It starts with the PGA Championship in Southern Hills in Tulsa. The first episode is titled Frenemies, and it details Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas and their lifelong friendship, playing golf together as kids, against each other in college. They fly to every tournament together on the same private jet. Really, really well done. It's just like Drive to Survive, the F1 series that people rave about. Really behind the scenes. I don't think that PGA Tour professionals will let down their guard as much as, the F1 guys, as an example. But it's still a different side you see. You don't hear Jordan Spieth, in interviews dropping F-bombs left and right, like you're going to see on this. Not that that's the only appeal of the show. But you go behind the scenes, the families, the parents, the coaches, the travel in and out of places. I'm 2 episodes in. Episode 1 was 58 minutes. Episode 2 was 40. I say that to say not every episode is going to be an hour long. So episode 2 is Brooks Koepka and the Masters and the Waste Management Open, which we just saw. Those 2 tournaments, really cool. Highly recommend. If you like Drive to Survive, you'll like this.
And absolutely, and this is a brilliant idea for access with the success of F1 and what they allowed and what PGA and LIV are allowing behind the scenes.
Well, and keep in mind, this was last year. So where I'm at in the documentary right now, they're just now talking about Phil Mickelson's comments about PGA and LIV.
Mm-hmm.
So all the players are being shown, being asked about it, and Rory's given his answer, Jordan Spieth, and there's reporters interviewed on it saying there's a lot of chatter about Dustin Johnson and Brooks Koepka and others getting huge offers, but they haven't started to address that yet in the series. So when that happens, then it's going to get really interesting, this documentary series, when those guys start to actually leave for the LIV Tour. It's good so far.
Binge-worthy for sure. Coming up, Jordan Schultz will join us, NFL insider for The Score. We'll talk Rodgers, Carr, Bieniemy, and more. That's next on Outkick 360.
Days ago, a train carrying toxic materials derailed near East Palestine, Ohio, causing a massive explosion and a toxic smoke cloud over the town. Ohio Governor DeWine insists the pollution doesn't pose a serious threat to the 5 million people affected, people that rely on the river for drinking water, but those who use private wells near the derailment should maybe drink bottled water for a while, but still no serious threat, he says. Yeah, sure, dude. I'd like to see him drink that water because something tells me he wouldn't. The people of East Palestine, who have been largely ignored, would beg to differ that this situation is contained, safe, and good to go. One of the chemicals on the train was vinyl chloride, which is highly flammable and carcinogenic, especially through inhalation. When burned, it decomposes into other toxic compounds, including hydrogen chloride. But again, don't worry, y'all. I'm sure the pets and other animals dropping dead are due to climate change or racism. Or maybe the people are just making it up, like the folks dropping dead from cardiac arrest after the experimental COVID vaccine. Who can we even trust anymore, honestly? The people in East Palestine are pissed, and they ought to be.
They don't deserve to be nuked with toxic chemicals. This is crazy. There should be so much outrage everywhere about this. It's absurd, and it stinks out here. Like, man, people just don't deserve to get nuked with toxic chemicals just because railroad companies make an error by not checking their trains to make sure they're safe. They go off, they derail, and then, oh, the only way we can get business back for our $55 billion business is for us to blow it up and just ruin a whole city of like 3,000 people. If there's something we should do like a give, send, go and get every house here of 2,000 houses, whatever it is, or for the whole city, like reverse osmosis water so that the next generation of people don't grow legs out of their head.
Amen. This is an environmental disaster of epic proportions, but yet I have yet to see teen climate snob Greta Thunberg or Al Gore or John Kerry on the scene. Hell, where the heck is our freaking president on this, or our transportation secretary? These hacks want to ban gas stoves to save the environment, but when toxic chemicals explode, where are they? They are disingenuous and lazy at best. These people want answers, and they deserve answers. Didn't Congress just spend trillions on an infrastructure package? What an excellent use of resources, as we can see. You know, it really burns my ass, no pun intended, that we send billions and billions of dollars in resources over to Ukraine, and yet when a situation like this happens on our own soil, we barely get a peep out of our leaders, and that's a bipartisan disappointment, by the way. Prayers to the people of Ohio. You deserve better leadership than this, and at the very least, you deserve some answers and transparency. Chinese spy balloons, UFOs being shot down every other day, and now this explosion in East Palestine, Ohio. How did we get so lucky as to have this guy at the helm when it all goes down? Just blessed, I guess. Super freaking blessed.
Hope everyone's having a great Friday. 6th and Peabody, our location. Everyone here's having a great time. Yeehaw Beer, Old Smoky Moonshine.
It's never a bad day at 6th and Peabody.
Chad, tonight we're headed to see Adam Sandler.
We are. When I tell people that,
I don't know what to expect.
Yeah, that's exactly what the response is.
Yeah,
Everyone
no
says,
idea.
is this a stand-up? Is it a concert? And I just say, I think it's both. Like, I think it's just a variety show. Like, there could be like play acting on stage. There could be video clips. There could be a lot of things.
Unlike Rihanna, I'm betting there will be special guests.
That Adam Sandler's not pregnant?
Well, that
Unlike Rihanna,
he may
Adam
be unzipped.
Sandler will not
he may be unzipped,
will not
but not
be pregnant tonight. We feel confident about that. I think it's gonna be fun. It's a big part of our adolescence. I think for a lot of people,
Yeah.
I feel like the clientele at this event tonight in Nashville with Adam Sandler will be all dudes around our age, or like 10 years older or to 10 years
A typical
younger.
event for us.
We'll be right in the middle, right? They'll be 10 years older and 10 years younger, and it just all guys. That'll be the Adam Sandler concert. It's going to be a blast, though. Looking forward to it. Huge shout out to my buddy Hunter Briley. Who sponsors us locally with Regal Realty in Nashville and our radio affiliate for hooking us up with the tickets tonight. Big time by him. We'll be in a suite. That should surprise no one. If we go to an event, Hutton, where are we typically? In a suite. Yeah.
Yeah, a sweet. Jordan Schultz joins us. Always great to be joined by the NFL insider for the score. Insider for all sports is how we will introduce him. Jordan Schultz with us on Outkick 360. Jordan, good to see you, man.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, scenario for you, and I want to get to Derek Carr in a moment, but I think it all centers around Aaron Rodgers and what he wants to do. If Rodgers emerges from this darkness retreat, from his cave, if he awakes like Groundhog Day and says, you know what, I saw something and it says I'm staying with the Green Bay Packers, what do the Green Bay Packers do?
I would be very surprised if he's a Packer next year. If he comes back and says, I really want to be here, let's run it back. I don't know how you say no to that, considering where the roster is, the synergy that he's built with Matt LaFleur. I mean, it's not perfect, but that would be really hard to say no to. I just don't see a scenario where that happens. I mean, listen, he's owed, I think, something like $50 million next year from them. He ultimately, I think the Jets, I mean, that's their guy. That's their top target. I know Derek Carr is there today, but they still want Aaron Rodgers. I think the ultimate for them is him for 2 years to help get this young roster that's very talented to the next level. But to answer your question, I guess I would be really surprised if that happened. And if it did, I guess they would also have to think long and hard about what they want, because we do know it's a soap opera every year. And Jordan Love, he may not have had a great first 3 years in terms of not playing, but his mechanics and where he's at now compared to when he came out of Utah State, it's like night and day. I mean, I've talked to really smart football people, much smarter than me, that talk about Jordan Love as being a real guy.
Well, and that sort of leads into my question. You know, there was a time when Jordan Love was drafted, it was clear Aaron Rodgers was done with the Packers and sort of had to get coaxed back in and told all the right things to be back on board. You know, Aaron Rodgers, I think, is probably out on being a Packer and wants to move on and try something else. But is the feeling mutual now? Do you feel like the Packers are probably also in a state of, yeah, we're good. We're good if you want to move on, and we'll try to find you a spot, right? Is this a mutual thing at this point?
I think it is. I think it would benefit both sides because really, I mean, if you look at Green Bay, they have some decisions to make, whether it's Bakhtiari, Rashawn Gary, ultimately, Randall Cobb could retire. They have guys that have been there, Mercedes Lewis, a long time, that they've kept there in large part because they want to make sure Aaron's happy. And he is, he won back-to-back MVPs just the last, right before this season. And obviously they've won a Super Bowl. They've had tremendous success. But where the roster is now, to me, listen, I know they can be competitive, but it makes the most sense for both sides to move on, considering what's happened at the end of each season the last several years. I mean, it's almost eerie how similar it is to Brett Favre and how things ended with him and how Aaron supplanted him. And now you have Jordan Love, who's in his mid-20s, was a first-round pick, and I think is probably ready to be the starter. And to me, it would make sense for him to ask for a trade if they go back to Aaron Rodgers, because he's sat so long and he knows the offense now. So, and then Aaron can go somewhere else. Maybe it's Vegas with Devontae Adams and Josh McDaniels. Maybe it's the Jets, but I think it would behoove both sides.
Rodgers in New York with the Jets, with that young roster, and yeah, I mean, there's so many things to point to as to why it would work. So, can you make the same case for Derek Carr if you are Woody Johnson, saying we're a veteran quarterback away, we would love Rodgers, but we can do it with Derek Carr? How tough of a reach is that to make?
I think Derek Carr, well, put it this way. Would you rather have 4 years of Derek Carr or 1 or 2 of Rodgers? I mean, because that's ultimately what you're asking as well. Not just the age. Carr's 32, Rodgers is pushing 40, but also just knowing what we know. But also just knowing what we know about Rodgers and how things play out with him. So I think Rodgers happy and healthy is still a big jump from Derek Carr. I think Carr, I know he's a 4-time Pro Bowler, but he hasn't really done it. He's never been a successful playoff quarterback. And I know Rodgers has had some disappointing exits, but he's won a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. That roster, you talked about it. I mean, Breece Hall, Michael Carter, Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore offensively, and then they drafted really well defensively. Sauce Gardner, obviously, Jermaine Johnson. I mean, they have a lot of guys. Quinnen Williams. We'll see what happens in free agency, but that team, I don't know if they're an Aaron Rodgers away from winning a Super Bowl, but if they had Aaron Rodgers, to me, they're an 11-12 win team. They're in the mix. Derek Carr, I think, gets you, double-digit wins perhaps, but you're not that threat that you would be with Rodgers. That's super scary. Either way, it's not going to be Zach Wilson. They realize that was a colossal mistake. I don't know what's going to happen if they're going to trade him or not, but they know they need a quarterback, and I think they are exhausting all options.
Yeah, Jordan, my answer to your question is I'd rather have a Super Bowl, and I think the chance of winning a Super Bowl with 2 years of Rodgers is far greater than 4 years with Carr. So I'm with you on that. My question would be, what are the Saints with Derek Carr? Another team he's visited. What does Derek Carr do for that team right now, given their roster?
I like it for them. I mean, he has the connection with Dennis Allen. They're really hoping, guys, that Michael Thomas becomes the Michael Thomas he was 3 years ago when he was an All-Pro. I think if he was an average player, he wouldn't have been on that roster, and they wouldn't have been as patient as they've been. I think he's a great player, and they hope that a guy like Derek Carr can give him that rejuvenation. And then they drafted Chris Olave, who had a phenomenal rookie year. So you're giving Carr a couple weapons there. We'll see what happens with Kamara from a legal standpoint, but I think he makes New Orleans better. The NFC South is arguably the softest division in the league, especially with Tom retiring. So he makes them better, but he doesn't put them over the top. If you bring in Derek Carr, if you're the Saints, and you have let's say a 4-year commitment, you're saying to your fan base that we're not really rebuilding, but we're also thinking about building. We're not rebuilding, but we're thinking about how to build around Derek Carr and his skill set, because at his age, we believe he's a top 10 quarterback. I mean, he was scheduled to make $40.4 million. He won't get that number, obviously, in New Orleans or anywhere else. But I think the Saints, Mickey Loomis, the GM, is an old school guy. I don't think he wants to wait. And it does send a message to your fan base that we're trying to be competitive.
At Schultz_report is where you can follow Jordan Schultz of The Score. So Greg Roman out in Baltimore. They have an extensive search, plenty of interviews. Lamar Jackson reportedly involved in this search. And we see that Todd Monken ends up taking this job, moving from Georgia, joining John Harbaugh in Baltimore. But you had the report earlier this week, Jordan, that Lamar Jackson was not guaranteed to be part of the equation with their new selection at offensive coordinator. With all of that in mind, is that just Baltimore thinking from their end, we're not really sure what Lamar is going to come back with and want to do?
I was pretty surprised to hear from multiple people that they were not given assurances, the OC candidates, that Lamar would be there next year. Because if you're hiring an OC, you generally want to know who your quarterback is, because that's going to help inform your decision-making process. And Todd Monken, I mean, I like the hire. He's going to be a lot different than Greg Roman. I think the idea is to keep Lamar a little bit more upright in the pocket, try to protect him. He's missed 34% of his snaps the last 2 years, 11 games. So they realize that. He's 26. He's a former league MVP. I think they're probably going to tag him exclusively, so he won't be able to negotiate with other teams. And you essentially push this down a year. You could also tag and trade him. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities, but I was surprised to learn that offensive coordinator candidates, and there were a lot of them, were not guaranteed that Lamar would be back next season. You mentioned something too. I can't remember who reported it, but I did read somewhere that Lamar, I want to say, and don't quote me on this, but I want to say he had the opportunity to be involved, but it was almost like he didn't want to be involved. He wasn't interested. I did see that floating out there. I haven't asked to confirm it, but that's interesting.
I guess from with who you've talked to, they didn't confirm that he was a part of the interview process.
I didn't even, to be honest, I didn't even ask. I was so focused on what was happening with Lamar in terms of were the coordinator candidates getting assurances that he'd be there next year. And the fact that they weren't given any assurances and there was a legitimate, like, we really don't know from John Harbaugh says a lot to me. And again, he doesn't have an agent too. And so when you're extracting information from an insider standpoint, you basically have three options. You have the team, the agent, and the player. And you want, at least generally, if you can get two, you're in pretty good shape. But Lamar's not talking. The team has been pretty quiet. And there's no agent. So it's tough to gather. That's why I think anyone that says, I know exactly what's happening there, I don't really buy it.
So one team to me that's the outlier, that had been some different reports from, some big NFL insiders like yourself, that link the Titans to both Derek Carr or Aaron Rodgers in a trade. And to me, it's the one that's a little bit out of place, given their current quarterback situation. Because the other teams are the obvious ones that definitely need a quarterback and have a decent roster around that quarterback spot. Is there any validity to the Titans being interested in trying to upgrade, or is it even an upgrade if it's Derek Carr instead of Ryan Tannehill? I got a lot of questions about that team being reported.
Is Derek Carr an upgrade? I mean, maybe a little bit, but Tennessee they're 2 seasons away removed from being the number 1 seed in the AFC. I told you I thought Rand Carthon was going to be a great hire, and I really believe that. And I think him and Vrabel will find that synergy. I don't know if I haven't dug on that yet about Rodgers and Carr potentially going to Tennessee, because I think if you ask me what I think is going to happen, I think Rodgers, I think the Jets and the Raiders, it's going to be one of those two, and I waffle back and forth on it, but I think it's going to be one of those two, and I still think Carr is going to the Saints. So I guess that almost answers your question. I would be surprised.
Yeah, no, and you said you love Rand Carthon as the pick for GM for the Titans. How hard is it, though, to try to predict something with a guy who's never been a GM before? Because I'm sure there's a lot of guys you look at in the league and say, I could see this guy doing X, or I could see them swinging big at this position for that. We don't really know with Rand Carthon until he pulls off the big move like, John Robinson pulled off in trading the number 1 pick back in 2016.
Yeah, I would go back to, pedigree and what your situation is, where you came from. And they obviously had the director of pro personnel in San Francisco. They had a tremendous amount of success, and they were able to find quarterbacks, not necessarily that were considered marquee guys. They obviously traded up a lot. They got Trey Lance. We to be determined there. Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. Jimmy Garoppolo, they traded for with New England, didn't give up a ton. So, you think about that, and you would surmise from that perhaps there wouldn't be a massive move at quarterback. But I don't know if it's just looking at it from realistically. Like, I don't know how much sense it makes to bring back Tannehill. Like, maybe it's a cut, maybe it's a trade, but I would be surprised if he ends up QB1 heading into next season. I don't know what's going to happen with Malik Willis, But from a Tannehill perspective, I'd be surprised. And Rand, his background is scouting, and he did a hell of a job. You think about some of the mid-round picks they hit on, Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner. To me, the draft would make a lot of sense, and then you can reset the clock from a quarterback standpoint on your cap. So that's, I guess, what I would surmise. But I tell you what, I'm going to be at the combine. I'll be taught. Give me another week or two, and I'll get more info for you, because I know this is a Titans show. The roster's pretty good, though. I mean, there's a lot to like about it. They need weapons, they need offensive line, but there's still a lot to like about that roster.
Just for my sake, do a favor for me when you're at the combine, and let's find out about Hendon Hooker and the possibility of Hendon Hooker being a first-round pick. That's just something that interests me, and I don't know if it's where the Titans pick, but if there's a trade down scenario, or if that's a guy that, a Titans-like team that's sort of on the end of having a good quarterback would maybe explore.
I'd say Hendon Hooker is one of the most interesting prospects in the entire draft. A lot of reasons. I mean, obviously, you guys know him well, just down the road in Knoxville, but he has a really interesting skill set. He's got a really good arm, a live arm. I know he's coming off the injury, but I was told he's making great progress. He has competed at the highest of levels, Virginia Tech and Tennessee, and dominated. And I mean, he was a Heisman frontrunner for most of the season. And he throws a beautiful ball. And I am not a quarterback guru, but I've asked scouts about him. And I don't know where he's going to go in the draft. I think he's going to go higher than people think, because he checks off all the character stuff. He's phenomenal. He's going to be good on the board. He's super smart. And then his arm talent is really impressive. He's physically big. He's obviously older. I think he'll be 24. He's 24, which is not like super ideal, but he's a guy that, he would make a lot of sense for the Titans. He'd make a lot of sense for a lot of teams. And I think he's going to end up going much earlier than people anticipate.
Jordan Schultz, our guest. It feels as though you need a couple of weeks to gauge some things on prospects, right? Maybe a couple.
The draft stuff tends to fall into place after the combine and when free agency really, after those first couple weeks of free agency.
And maybe a couple of hours until we know about Eric Bieniemy. I just looked. I haven't seen a report that he's actually officially the new OC in Washington. It feels like it's headed that way. I got the sense even last year, and certainly based on comments from Andy Reid right after the Super Bowl, I don't get the sense Kansas City's trying to keep him around. Which, again, I think also plays a factor in this. I think that 30,000-foot view is, he wants to leave to get out from underneath Andy Reid. I don't get the sense that the comments I'm hearing from players or coaches, it's not your typical, hey, we love this guy, we got to keep him. Am I wrong?
I think they'd like to keep him, but I feel like, listen, Andy Reid has been super proactive in terms of saying how helpful and talented Bieniemy is. And it's when you watch Super Bowl, you see some of their creative play calling. I mean, Andy Reid gets the credit that. I don't know how fair it is, because I think it's really a split. I mean, he is a great offensive mind, but Bieniemy is 53. His resume is as good as anyone's.
Yes,
it makes a lot of sense that he go to Washington. I reported yesterday that they've wanted Ron Rivera has wanted Bieniemy to be the guy. He's been there for 2 days. They had dinner back-to-back nights. I think he will be the offensive coordinator. But then you also have, Matt Nagy was brought in by Brett Veach, and he would then assume essentially the offensive coordinator position. And so I guess you could tie that together. But Kansas City would, I think, at the end of the day, would love for Bieniemy to be back. I just think realistically, both sides realize that it's probably best for him, especially if he wants to be a head coach and really get that opportunity to go to a place like Washington, for example, develop Sam Howell, who they really like inside that building. I mean, I just had Jahan Dotson on my show, and he was raving about him, and I've heard that a lot. If he were to develop Sam Howell and get that offense humming, even a year or two, he would have an opportunity to be a head coach potentially. So I think they like him back, but I think realistically, both sides realize it's probably best for him to move on.
What do you think of the staff that Sean Payton's putting together in Denver?
He's not done, but he is. This is why Sean Payton is such a good coach. It's not just the week-to-week preparing game plan and developing a quarterback. It's putting together a staff and being the CEO. This is what this is what the Penner family wanted. They wanted a head coach who could be a CEO and collaborate with George Payton. And maybe that takes some of George Payton power away a little bit, but it gives him an opportunity to focus a lot more on scouting and have an opportunity to have a head coach who can build a staff that is a professional staff. I mean, they had some really good pieces there last year. They lost to DC. That was a killer. But ultimately, Nathaniel Hackett, as a first-time head coach, wasn't ready to be in that position. I think he's a really good offensive coach, but he didn't command that locker room. He lost that locker room really early on, and we saw what happened. So this is why you have Sean Payton. This is why you give up what you did, why you pay him $20 million or whatever it was, because he's going to put together a staff that's going to empower the players to maximize in a way that they just couldn't do with Hackett.
Jordan, final thing, final 60 seconds or so. Chad, we always tease Jordan about talking NBA. We need to tell him about this All-Star Game draft.
Yeah, he's an NBA insider. Is this
Your
report
thoughts?
true that they want to do away with making someone the last pick and have them feel bad? So they want to have the reserves picked first and then the starters taken after.
I saw that, and I can't remember who it was last year, but somebody got picked last, and it wasn't great. It was just kind of bad PR. So I really shifted, honestly, toward the NFL insider, really, just with that. But you're dealing with the ultimate alpha male egos of NBA All-Star, and then to be picked last, it's not.
But they're being picked last of the All-Stars.
I know, but nobody wants to be last.
I think like the old era, the alpha mentality would be, oh, please pick me last because I'm going to let you hear about it when I put up 30 on you against your team again.
Yeah.
Hey, you shouldn't have picked me last in that All-Star game. This is really some ego protection to the next level, I think, when I saw this story.
It is, but I feel like this was only a matter of time because that did not sit well last year. And I don't think anybody, even at this level, wants to be last. Imagine like you have the Pro Bowl, let's say Derek Carr, and he's picked last as the quarterback. He's a 4-time Pro Bowler, but then it's like, I'm actually last. My peers pick me last. That nobody wants that. That's tough.
Just rough. When I see this, that they have to placate to the last pick.
Rough life for those NBA All-Stars.
Every kid on the playground is picked last, and some you don't pick the
That's
reserve.
True.
I mean,
that's true.
It's not the hardest thing to be picked last and then ball out like Chad and I had to do.
I take the Billy Hoyle approach from White Men Can't Jump. I pray that I'm picked last so I can go get my set shot over in the corner and bury a couple threes and make them pay for it.
Jordan, appreciate you, man. You're our first pick for NFL News. We appreciate you as always.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys. Anytime. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate you.
At Schultz_report there from the Score. Great stuff as always from Jordan. Coming up, plenty to discuss. We've got Daytona news in about 15 minutes or so from our Zach Dean from Outkick, who's there at Daytona for the Daytona 500. But when we come back, there is football starting up as well. The XFL is back. Is it too soon? That's next on Outkick 360.
Welcome into Outkick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
So the higher that number can be, the better you are with the committee. It's really that simple.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really got to lean into the turns.
He's got incredible taste in which media figures he listens to.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
Why are we going through Melania's goods? Don't make Brittany Griner out to be some type freedom fighter. Shouldn't there be a little bit of common sense? Let's roll them, big boy. What do you got?
They want to find someone to be the face of domestic terrorism, and they want it to be a right-wing Trump supporter. Don't let them entrap you into doing something dumb. But they were hyper-rational. They looked at the data, and they said it makes no sense for me to submit to this COVID shot mandate.
Get the shot or you can't go to your brother's wedding. Get the shot or you can't go to your daughter's graduation. Get the shot or else.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hutton and Withrow with you. Chad, the XFL is back. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson behind it this go around. I need to be hooked. The problem with the spring leagues, it needs to start at quarterback. They've got the coaches. They've got the fanfare. They're bringing back the logos and all that. It's got to start at quarterback. And all those quarterbacks are under contract with the league.
The Rock needs to play quarterback for me to get interested.
Yep.
It's too quick. I think this is the fault of it, right? Like it's
you need like a month or so, like the USFL?
Yeah, and look, I'm not saying this because I'm biased because we've been around the USFL. I would have said this from the start. I don't think what America craves the Sunday or the week after the Super Bowl is a lesser product than the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to tease it out a bit. I think that time frame of USFL from Easter to July 4th is perfect. Like, wait that long. Get
Easter
through,
weekend.
Get through college basketball. Get into the NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs. Do your league then. We'll see if it works. I'm not poo-pooing the idea. I'm just saying too quick for my liking.
Did you see where T. Martin is interviewing for the offensive coordinator position in Indianapolis?
I did not.
They've requested to chat with him, with T.
That'd be a big, he's been offensive coordinator. I'm trying to think if T's ever been solo OC in college. I feel like he's always been the co-offensive coordinator. Maybe at Kentucky, he was the offensive coordinator. But he's always, he's been never been an NFL coordinator.
No, but clearly he likes the NFL game, right? Because he could have gone. He's had multiple opportunities to return to the college game, the coaching aspect of it.
I think the places he's been now, USC, Tennessee, it's going to take a really good job.
He's currently the wide receivers coach in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And Shane Steichen.
It's going to take a really good job, though, to get back into college, I'm saying.
Shane Steichen has requested to interview him for the OC position, but Steichen's going to call plays. Keep that in mind, too.
Yeah, he was solo offensive coordinator at USC. But I always thought that, like, Tyson Helton was a part of that, too. Remember when Jeremy Pruitt hired Tyson Helton?
You're right.
One was passing game coordinator, one was run game coordinator. So,
and Helton got the...
He's held the title of offensive coordinator. My point is, he's not been an NFL offensive coordinator and completely run the show to that level. So I'd like to see how he would do with that.
This time of year, unfortunately, it's the start of college baseball season. Way too early. Way too early with the cold temperatures across the country and the cancellations that we'll see due to weather and inclement weather. Not too early, though, for NASCAR. Daytona 500. Time to crank it up.
Now is the time for NASCAR, Hudson.
Zach Dean,
I say that every year at this time. Now is the time for NASCAR.
Zach is down there on behalf of Outkick. We will chat with him about the big headlines and who is the underdog winner. We saw it last year. Who could it be in 2023? Zach Dean next on Outkick 360.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking that we're going to be practicing the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude, the Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Just like that, the final hour is here for Outkick 360 on the Friday edition.
We made it. Almost. Almost made it. Matt said we couldn't.
Close.
Or Matt heard from the people who said we couldn't make it, but here we are.
He reports that every day.
1 hour left. That's what he does.
We show up and he says, guys, you've already failed.
And that, Matt serves as like our hate barometer.
Yeah.
He goes out there. He gets out in the streets, and he goes out in the bar room.
We're here.
And he finds out everyone who says we couldn't make it, and he brings that intel back to us and tells us, and then it fuels us the rest of the show. Much like being picked last at an NBA All-Star game could fuel a player into a great career. That's what Matt does for us.
Not picked last is Zach Dean from Outkick.com, because he gets to cover the Daytona 500, and he joins us now, and he's been busy. He's writing nightcaps, which is available now at Outkick.com and in your inbox every day by around 4 o'clock Eastern. You can check that out. Leading off is the Tampon Gate with Tiger Woods and Justin Thomas from Riviera at the Genesis Invitational. Zach, good to see you, man, and hope you're enjoying Daytona.
And I saw after that story published, like right at the same time, Tiger went out and apologized. Is that true? So I guess he didn't read it, I guess.
I hope he didn't apologize. I've yet to see that.
No,
But
I think I saw
hope
he
didn't.
apologized.
Oh,
I'm
no.
pretty sure he bent the knee. So I try to defend him, and then he goes and does something like that. So
Yeah.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, he does. I mean, again, it's so obvious that it was a joke, and it's been played up as something more than that. It's ridiculous. Give us the lay of the land of Daytona for those who have never been. I've never been to the 500. I enjoy keeping up with race day. And it's the Super Bowl in week 1 instead of the final week of the season. What is it like boots on the ground there?
mayhem, just chaos. I mean, it's this is probably my 5th or 6th 500 I've covered, and you can't get here early enough to do it or to beat the traffic, even on a Friday when it's just a truck race tonight and they have qualifying for the trucks going on right now in practice. Cup guys aren't even on the ground today. They're not even doing anything, I'm pretty sure, but the traffic is still unreal trying to get in and out. It's pandemonium once you go under the tunnel to go. You pull into Daytona, you get through all the security nonsense, you go under the turn 1 tunnel, and once you come out of there, it's just campers and RVs, and it looks like when you open up the gates to Disney World and everybody just runs in. That's literally what it's like all throughout the infield of Daytona, and it's a huge infield. Like, some of these tracks are so small, Martinsville, Bristol, whatever you want to talk about. They're so tiny. Even the Coliseum a couple weeks ago. Daytona International Speedway is so giant. It's like an entirely different community and city by itself. That once you get in there, if you don't know what you're doing, you can get lost, because I have gotten lost one of my first times covering the race. If you get into the bowels too much, you might never come out. So it's chaos. It's crazy. There's bush light everywhere, which I love. I mean, it's just can't beat that. So when it's hot out like it is right now, it's not bad scenery. So it was a lot of fun.
That Busch Light Super Bowl ad was really good too with Sarah McLachlan. So I like it more after that ad. So we were at the Waste Management Open last weekend, Hunt and I, and people asked, what's it like? And I'd say it's unlike any golf event I've ever witnessed in terms of the atmosphere, the clientele, everything there. Very different. How does Daytona, other than traffic and everything else, how does it separate itself from other races? I'm sure, venue, where you are in America for a race has a lot to do with it. But what is so different about this one as opposed to other races?
Yeah, for one, it's the crowds. I mean, I know we're not supposed to talk about the crowds, but even when it comes to NASCAR, because you've heard for years how attendance is dwindling and whatnot. And that's true across the board, really across all sports, minus football. But the crowds are it's incredible. It's 101,000 plus people all packed in at the same time. And you get to go out to the ball field before the race. The Daytona 500 pre-race ceremonies, when they open the garage, you can go out to the ball field right on pit road. And it's just completely shoulder to it's like a festival. Seriously, it's like Woodstock. I mean, I wasn't at Woodstock. Maybe you guys were. I don't know. But I wasn't there. But I've heard that comparison many times. And it's just the crowds. You don't get it anywhere else. Even Talladega, which is bigger than Daytona. Even at the championship race at Phoenix, it doesn't come anywhere close to the crowds. And what separates NASCAR from other sports is the fact that those crowds can be field level or, on the track in the garage. It's the equivalent of if you could open up the Super Bowl locker rooms to fans. You can't do that. Nobody does that. You don't open up Major League Baseball clubhouses. They open up pit road to fans. Fans are walking down pit road right where they're working on cars and right where they're in 3 hours going to be driving 180 miles an hour. But fans are just walking and having a good time and drinking beer and listening to music, and it's just chaos. But it's controlled chaos that you really truly don't get at very many other venues.
Trying to pick the winner of the 500 is extremely difficult any year. But last year, Austin Cindric wins it as a rookie. This year, if you look at the odds, everyone, there are 20 drivers bunched up together at around plus 1,200 to plus 1,600. Among the favorites up top, Zach, who do you point to as the favorite, given that everyone's bunched together? And let's just start with the group of drivers everyone would know.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm actually just finishing up a story right now, putting together the gambling odds and the best bets and the sleepers, and it's tough. It's probably the biggest wild card of the season, so it's tough to.
Zach Dean with us, and he's in one of these little pods down in Daytona, the media pods. There's so many people there, Chad. They're jumping on the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, everybody's on the Wi-Fi at the same time, so we'll hopefully reconnect with them and be able to continue talking about this. It is an event, Hutton, that I've always wanted to go to. I've heard from people in NASCAR, you want to go to Talladega before Daytona.
To me, the Waste Management Open version of NASCAR would be Talladega.
Talladega. I've heard great things about Bristol. I've been there for a football game when Tennessee played Virginia Tech, but never been there for a race. So, yeah, Daytona's definitely on the list. It is it's the big one in NASCAR, but it's interesting to hear his take on it, having been there so often.
Zach Dean back with us from Outkick. Zach, not your fault. Blame NASCAR for the frozen Wi-Fi there. Pick up where you were discussing. You're writing a current piece for Outkick on the favorites and who you would point to Where do you lean and why?
Yeah, you look at the favorites. Denny Hamlin's an obvious one. He's a 3-time winner. I was just looking at DraftKings. He's not even the favorite. For some reason, Kyle Larson's the favorite. I don't understand that. Kyle Larson's never won this race. Kyle Larson, if I'm remembering correctly, has never won a super speedway race. So I'm not really sure why he's the favorite. It seems a little silly to me. I definitely wouldn't go there. Denny Hamlin, I think, is sitting at 13-1. I don't think it's a bad little sprinkle. Bubba Wallace at 18-1, not a bad sprinkle. He's always up front at the end of this race. Michael McDowell, I think, is maybe the best bet. I don't understand why he's 35-1. He's a former winner. He's always in contention here in Talladega. He's got the respect of the other drivers because he's won this race and he knows how to win it. So I think, a long shot to me, I don't understand why he's still a long shot, but at 35-1, I think you're stealing money with Michael McDowell if you sprinkle a little bit there. But yeah, it's such a tough race because it's all out of the driver's control. I mean, it's all about where you are. And now 3 years ago, this race, the big one happened on lap 14 and it took out half the field. And it's like, why are you guys wrecking on lap 14 of a 200 lap race when you're supposed to just try to get, make it to the end? So it just kind of depends on if you're in the right place at the right time. And that's why it took so long for Dale Earnhardt to win this race, because he was never in the right place at the right time. And when he was, something went wrong. So it's a tough race to handicap.
Michael McDowell, Chad, I'm betting it right now.
Nice, yeah. I will once we're done with this interview for sure. I've long been a fan of screen caps with Joe Kinsey. Now with nightcaps, and I'm looking at some of the headlines. I love what I've read so far. Take us through the process, Zach, when you write in nightcaps of where you're looking, what stories you're looking for, is anything out of bounds, what type of feedback you're getting, what rabbit holes are you going down, what's it been like writing this column so far for Outkick?
Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, I had the Monday morning pit stop NASCAR column, which was kind of a little bit of a delve into the screen cap world that I've been doing for 6 or 7 months, and it's done really well. But nightcaps has been a whole different animal. It's been fun because you get to go and you get to kind of do entertainment crossover, and you get to do it's not just sports. In fact, a lot of it's not sports. It's what people are talking about. It's what's weirdly trending. I mean, this week I wrote about a Lindsay Lohan stripper horror movie from 2007 that after 15 years, for some reason, became Netflix's most watched movie over the weekend. And it's a terrible movie, but it's Lindsay Lohan stripping because she's lost her identity and someone's trying to kill her. And it's a terrible movie. And I'm like, why is that trending? I'm like, well, that if I'm thinking that, maybe other people are thinking that. So it takes you in different directions. Today's was easy. I mean, Tiger Woods, not surprisingly, got hammered by the mob because they got all up in arms because of the tampon thing. And of course, you're like, that's just a joke. Obviously, it's just guys playing golf. But then you look at Twitter and you look at USA Today, my former employer, who thank God I'm not there anymore. They're like writing columns, like saying Tiger should be ashamed of himself. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, this is so stupid. But it gives me a platform to make fun of people and make fun of things and bring out, different trending, whether it's pop culture or sports, and give our readers sort of a different view or different look at things. And, I likened it to, I used to live in Boston. So I used to take subway everywhere, and I would be in school all day in college, and I'd miss a ton of things. So I'd get back on the subway and have a 40-minute ride home. And I'm sitting there, I'm staring at my phone the whole time, trying to catch up on what I missed throughout the day or watching funny videos. And that's kind of what I want nightcaps to be. I want you to be able to catch up on things you missed, or things that make you laugh, or things that make you roll your eyes that you may have missed throughout the day, and pass the time for 30 minutes every night.
To reading Tiger's apology, at least he didn't apologize for doing it. He's apologizing for, if you're offended, I didn't mean it as that in any way, shape, or form. It was it's turned into it's all fun and games. Obviously, it hasn't turned out that way. If I offended anybody, that was not the case. He came short of saying, if I'm offended that you're offended, which I think would be hilarious. But
he said, if you're offended, I apologize. It's not. I'm not sorry for it, but if you're offended.
Well, he never said sorry or apologize. He just said
it wasn't meant to be something to offend you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what was done there. Yes.
Should need to be said, for starters. Yeah.
For those that don't know, he outdrove Justin Thomas on the 9th hole yesterday, and a on a move that was not meant for cameras to pick up, reached his hand out, dropped something in Justin Thomas's hand, and if you zoom in, you can see the Tampax logo.
And it was Justin Thomas laughed when he saw it also.
And, of course, Christine Brennan was offended.
Yes.
Christine Brennan, who I'm sure did not write a column on Don Lemon this week, wrote a column on Tiger Woods.
I wrote a column about, now young girls won't want to play golf anymore because of this, because they're clearly not welcome. I mean, that is a stretch. Congrats on not being a USA Today anymore.
It's just, it's funny because I'm out in the media center, which is right to my left right here, and I'm sitting. I still have my old seat at the media center, which is right by my former employers, the Daytona Beach News Journal, which I still have great friends over there. Like they're not, I have buddies over there who one of them who's covered NASCAR for 40 years, who actually really helped me break into this business as far as NASCAR goes. And I tell him all the time he would be perfect at Outkick because he feels the exact same way as I do. And he's one of the few people who are still stuck in that prison of the corporate mainstream media that's just spouting off about Tiger Woods today. And it's just like, guys, my God, it's 2023. You just can't laugh at anything. It's unbelievable.
Let's imagine which sports can do it and which sports can't. UFC, turn on a press conference. See the language and the references they make. Not a peep about it. But Tiger Woods does something,
comedy,
you have to zoom in on it and then.
Yeah, comedians were, they were shielded from all of this, and a lot of them still are. But you could say anything when you watch a stand-up special, and that kind of went away with Dave Chappelle and some of the backlash. So it's all coming down next, right? All of comedy is dead.
Zach, best rivalry right now in NASCAR.
Good question. I think it's an easy one. Right now, it's Joey Logano and Kyle Busch. I wrote about it in my Monday morning pit stop column last Monday. After the clash out in the Coliseum, Kyle Busch went on Sirius XM radio and called Joey Logano a two-faced liar because they did a spot up in the Fox booth during the heat races, and they were all buddy-buddy and giggly, and then they went out on the track and raced each other, and Logano dumped him, and Kyle Busch got pissed about it and called him out after the race and said that he was a two-faced liar and should never trust him. And then Logano fired back and said, well, yeah, I am two-faced, basically deal with it. Sorry, I'm trying to win a race. So I think right now, and I think you're going to see it percolate throughout the year. That seems like one, getting off on the right foot. Logano and Kyle Busch, two veterans, two champions, two very brash personalities. I think it's a good one. Ross Chastain last year wrecked everybody, including Denny Hamlin, and took it in the chin a few times. I don't know if there's a rivalry there yet, but I don't think he's probably going to wreck some people along the way this year and get it back to him. So, but yeah, I think Logano and Kyle Busch, and frankly, it's good for NASCAR because NASCAR is always better when people are yelling at each other and throwing punches and calling people, dicks on Sirius XM radio. So.
Outkick.com/bet is where you can go, and right now you can get Michael McDowell at plus 4,000.
So not bad.
Yeah, so go ahead and put $10 down on that, and make you a little cash based on what Zach Dean's advice would be on a flyer. Good news for you: great weather, as you well know. Great weather on Sunday is expected. It can change, but high 70s, sunny. Can't ask for much more. For the Daytona 500. Zach, thank you so much, man. We'll be tuned into your coverage at Outkick.
Yeah, thanks, fellas. Let's do it again.
Thanks, Zach.
And go check out Outkick.com where you can subscribe for nightcaps as well as screencaps so you can get in the morning. Chad, a piece that was at Outkick this past summer/spring, about a year ago, maybe a little bit later than that, you had a piece involving SEC and future scheduling once Texas and Oklahoma join the conference. And this ties in to the Trey Wallace podcast and his conversation with SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. We will discuss that and compare it to what you wrote about and what you brought to the show and what I think is a great model.
Yeah, and it looks like, by all accounts, from Sankey and everyone else reporting on it, that they will move to a 6-3 model, 6 rotating opponents, 3 constant opponents. I've got a plan for the 3 constant opponents for every team in the new SEC, including Texas and Oklahoma.
And the new SEC also includes ESPN, and there's one aspect that Chad doesn't agree with this and what changes could be coming for scheduling. That's next on Outkick 360.
days ago, a train carrying toxic materials derailed near East Palestine, Ohio, causing a massive explosion and a toxic smoke cloud over the town. Ohio Governor DeWine insists the pollution doesn't pose a serious threat to the 5 million people affected, people that rely on the river for drinking water, but those who use private wells near the derailment should maybe drink bottled water for a while, but still no serious threat, he says. Yeah, sure, dude. I'd like to see him drink that water because something tells me he wouldn't. The people of East Palestine, who have been largely ignored, would beg to differ that this situation is contained, safe, and good to go. One of the chemicals on the train was vinyl chloride, which is highly flammable and carcinogenic, especially through inhalation. When burned, it decomposes into other toxic compounds, including hydrogen chloride. But again, don't worry, y'all. I'm sure the pets and other animals dropping dead are due to climate change or racism. Or maybe the people are just making it up, like the folks dropping dead from cardiac arrest after the experimental COVID vaccine. Who can we even trust anymore, honestly? The people in East Palestine are pissed, and they ought to be.
They don't deserve to be nuked with toxic chemicals. This is crazy. There should be so much outrage everywhere about this. It's absurd, and it stinks out here. Like, man, people just don't deserve to get nuked with toxic chemicals just because railroad companies make an error by not checking their trains to make sure they're safe. They go off, they derail, and then, oh, the only way we can get business back for our $55 billion business is for us to blow it up and just ruin a whole city of like 3,000 people. If there's something we should do like a give, send, go and get every house here of 2,000 houses, whatever it is, or for the whole city, like reverse osmosis water so that the next generation of people don't grow legs out of their head.
Amen. This is an environmental disaster of epic proportions, but yet I have yet to see teen climate snob Greta Thunberg or Al Gore or John Kerry on the scene. Hell, where the heck is our freaking president on this, or our transportation secretary? These hacks want to ban gas stoves to save the environment, but when toxic chemicals explode, where are they? They are disingenuous and lazy at best. These people want answers, and they deserve answers. Didn't Congress just spend trillions on an infrastructure package? What an excellent use of resources, as we can see. You know, it really burns my ass, no pun intended, that we send billions and billions of dollars in resources over to Ukraine, and yet when a situation like this happens on our own soil, we barely get a peep out of our leaders, and that's a bipartisan disappointment, by the way. Prayers to the people of Ohio. You deserve better leadership than this, and at the very least, you deserve some answers and transparency. Chinese spy balloons, UFOs being shot down every other day, and now this explosion in East Palestine, Ohio. How did we get so lucky as to have this guy at the helm when it all goes down? Just blessed, I guess. Super freaking blessed.
Tiger Woods had to apologize for the prank that he pulled on Justin Thomas.
With JT from 9 yesterday is kind of going viral. Can you kind of just explain your thoughts behind it?
Yeah, it was supposed to be, all fun and games, but obviously it hasn't turned out that way. And if I offended anybody, it was not the case. It was just friends having fun. And as I said, if I offended anybody in any way, shape, or form, I'm sorry. It was not intended to be that way. It's just, we play pranks on one another all the time, and virally, I think this did not come across that way. But between us, it's different.
Exactly. Between us, it's different with Tiger and JT.
I thought that was fine. He didn't really apologize.
No.
And the woman asking the question that was not a gotcha type thing.
No, it was just.
She's laughing as she said it. Hey, it's kind of gone viral, become a story. Tell us about the joke and the prank. And then he talked about it. That's fine. I just hate forced apologies. And I feel like when you're saying, as you're laughing, hey, if anyone was offended, I apologize. I'm sorry. I mean, yeah,
you have
it's
John.
nothing.
So you have John Rahm saying yesterday after the first round, which was a great first round, and the trio there of McIlroy, Justin Thomas, and Tiger, great round of golf yesterday, where Tiger was what, 2 under? Yeah, 2 under.
Yep.
You have that. You have John Rahm saying, it's not a major. I'm not trying to compare it to a major, but it has the feel of a big tournament at the Genesis Invitational. We're tuned in over the last 2 days, making the reporters there relevant for their coverage of Tiger Woods at 47 years old, limping around a course, unlikely to make the cut. And this has to be the story because your generic country club prank where you outdrive a guy happens on, how dare they, the PGA course of Riviera. And because we have to zoom in on it to see the name brand on whatever it was that was handed to him. Was that a $100 bill? No, it was a tampon.
You bring up an interesting point that Tiger Woods is the only reason that America's interested.
It's the only reason we're talking about the PGA today.
In this tournament, right? I mean, yeah, the diehards are going to be interested. And the gamblers will be interested. They'll watch on Saturday and Sunday. But we've been updating a Thursday and Friday of the Genesis Invitational.
Yes.
Because of Tiger Woods. And because Tiger Woods does, it's immature, sure, it's a joke. Guys do immature things all the time. Girls do immature things all the time. It's a joke amongst good friends. It's just so overblown.
Yes.
And it's tiresome. If you're Christine Brennan, do you not get exhausted writing the same outrage?
She stays
over
relevant.
Everything over and over again?
She stays relevant by getting clicks by doing this. And a very repetitive storyline.
I would just get so bored if I were her. Like I'd be so bored being upset about that.
Yeah, I mean it's very predictable though. I get bored with media being predictable.
Yeah,
and
let's mix it up.
It's extremely predictable.
Unpredictability is a good thing sometimes.
Yeah,
the unpredictable thing would have been waking up today and not one person
I
having
enjoyed?
a problem with that and everybody laughing at it.
I enjoyed the responses on social media, which are really funny if you zoom in on it, and you can check that out. I also enjoyed watching the round of golf that Christine Brennan would prefer not to do. Watching the round of golf with Tiger Woods. I enjoyed watching Tiger Woods putt into a bunker today.
Yes, that was the highlight of my day, was watching that. First off, because it made me feel better about my golf game, watching Tiger Woods, putt into a bunker.
Yeah.
But also, here's my thoughts watching Tiger Woods now. It's that I'm honestly worried for the guy on every step, but I can't turn away. It's not the Daytona 500 NASCAR car crash type thing. I'm watching him, and I'm studying him like a physical therapist
and he's playing,
would study their patient.
And he's playing just well enough to make you believe. I
love it.
You want to watch the car accident until it gets to a certain point, and then it's like, okay, tap it enough. In this case, he's giving us just enough every time he plays to where you want to believe that, maybe that next major is the next one where he's going to be in contention. Probably not, but you're still tuned in to find out what's going to happen and if he's going to make the cut.
Well, we're watching before the show today, and what did I keep saying? Oh, don't step in that drainage hole.
Mm-hmm.
Don't step in that divot.
Yeah, don't turn an
I'm
ankle.
watching every step and thinking, oh, this is where he's going to turn his ankle, or he's going to have another knee problem, or his surgically repaired leg is going to give out. Even the bunker shot. I mean, how is he going to get down there in the bunker and get? It's must-watch TV in an odd way. I mean, he's not. I said it, I don't think he's going to win another tournament, but what he did in this tournament is really, really impressive. Even if he does not make the cut, it's very impressive that he was 2 under par after one round and finishes with a chance to make the weekend, given everything that's gone on. But I watch Tiger Woods now with a mix of excitement and fear with every step that he takes. But I can't stop watching.
Coming up, we will preview what's one of the best games of the college basketball weekend as Kentucky in a big matchup host Tennessee tomorrow. We'll detail that. Chad, we had Trey Wallace on yesterday, and right now you can go to Outkick.com and you can hear the podcast where he had a chat with SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. And as we set up a pod system and the 3 common opponents that Chad came up with middle of last year, once Texas and Oklahoma joined the conference, we now know that's going to be July 1st, 2024. And here's what Greg Sankey told Trey Wallace about the SEC plans to do for scheduling moving forward.
And when we announced the expansion, I basically said 2 things right up front. Let's engage in blue sky thinking, which is meant to look really broadly at the possibilities. And the second was we needed to rotate our teams through all of our campuses with greater frequency. And so let's look at a scheduling model that would facilitate that. You know, now some cross-divisional opponents, it's 12 years between visits. And then we went into a discussion with athletics directors, both as in a group setting and individually, really for about 6 months. What do they want? What are their priorities? The words fairness and balance are always talked about. Then we had to define those. And the fairness issue is rotation. The balance issue is frequent rotation through schedules. The fairness issue is kind of a competitive bandwidth. That can be accomplished in a number of ways. We looked at 40 plus different models with all kinds of submodels off of those. Long answer to say, we're going to walk up to, is it a divisional format or is it a single divisional format? What are the continuing annual opponents? What are those that rotate? Is it 8 or 9? And then how often do we see everyone rotate through the schedules? I think we have from today about 90 days to figure that out. I'd welcome the chance to make decisions before we go to Destin.
There's Greg Sankey. You can hear the full conversation, Outkick.com, Trey Wallace podcast. Chad, they're going to 9 games.
Yep.
And they're doing away with divisions. I think we know that. The question is the common opponent angle and which programs in your traditional rivalry matchups stay alive versus which must be sacrificed based on Texas and Oklahoma joining the conference. And you had to do the digging to pair up what made sense for each program. And it's not just based on, oh, this will be a great matchup in 2023. You're looking at it in totality of what makes sense regionally and what has made sense over the history of the conference and college football.
Yeah, and I came up with this list a while back for Outkick, and it's at Outkick.com. I'll also say that, talking about history, I think this move to 9 games is going to happen, and it was inevitable. 6-3 breakdown, I'm fine with that. I don't like losing the divisions. That's now historic. It sounds crazy to some people. It's been around for 31 years, the divisional format. So I don't necessarily like. I think that's a bigger break than what we're giving credit for. I think it was a bigger break in SEC basketball than what we give it credit for. So I don't love the split with no divisions, but going straight down, 1 through 16. But this is the most likely scenario, and I don't hate it. I mean, 9 SEC games. It's going to be a better product. You're going to get one less, cupcake game throughout the year. You're going to get more conference opponents and big-time rivalries. And I think it would look something like this in terms of common opponents if you're looking at every team having 3 constant opponents and rotating the other 6. I'll hit some of the highlights here. I'm not going to go through every program. Alabama is going to be on top of mind for everyone every season, especially when Nick Saban is there. Their constant opponents in my model would be Tennessee, which is the third Saturday in October, big-time historic rivalry.
To me, that has to stay.
And the other one's got to stay is the Iron Bowl.
Yep.
Alabama, Auburn would stay, and then you bring on Texas to play Alabama every year. Now, some other teams, you look at that and say, that's pretty tough. If you're Alabama, those three teams, I'd also say, well, you're Alabama. I tried to factor in, Vanderbilt needs to play a Vanderbilt-like program historically. You got to look at that too. People immediately jumped and said, well, Tennessee's way too easy because I have Tennessee playing, by the way, Alabama every year. Continue. That's not easy. But their other two would be Vanderbilt, in-state rival, and Kentucky. Well, I got to pair Kentucky with someone. Tennessee was maybe Kentucky's biggest rival in the SEC if you polled Kentucky fans. So that's a game that would have meaning for them. There's no perfect way to put it together, but I think this would be the most sound solution. Texas, Oklahoma has to happen. Texas A&M has to happen.
Yes.
Texas, Alabama would be awesome for the college football fan. Do Texas fans want to play Alabama every year? Probably not. Do SEC fans want to watch that game every year? Absolutely. So I put that game in. Oklahoma would have Texas, would have A&M. You got the old Southwest Conference rivals, the old Big 12 rivals, with those three teams playing a round robin. And then I added an old Big 12 team to the mix with Missouri as Oklahoma's other constant opponent. So, again, there's no perfect scenario here where everyone is going to have an even schedule. They're going to play two good teams and one so-so program. Some are going to play an easier constant opponent schedule. Others will play more difficult. Bottom line is, I tried to factor in what's most fair given the history of the programs. But the biggest part of it is, what do college football fans want to see every year? And this is the model I came up with.
So I also, a part of this is not based on ease of schedule, but at some point you have programs that must be paired together because you're making room for the rivalries that have traditionally mattered over time. And by the way, having a big say in this, I believe, will be the television network of ESPN, ABC, Disney. Because they want, on an annual basis, the best possible program matchups historically, year after year after year, instead of every other year or whatever they're trying to set up where every team visits everyone within a certain amount of time.
Well, now that everything moves to ESPN, so that is, there is an SEC network, which is also owned by Disney, ESPN, but ESPN is the SEC network also, ESPN2, ESPNU, any of their properties, ESPN Plus, will now also be the SEC network by extension. What are the matchups right off the bat that you say, they'll say, we have to have these every year? Iron Bowl, Red River Shootout, A&M Texas, Florida Georgia.
Yep.
I mean, it's the ones that everyone thinks about to begin with. They will go through that list first and decide from a television product with the amount of money we're paying you and also with the more money you're going to want to make in the next contract, here's what we must have. Then you balance that out, Hutton, I think, with what do the schools want, what rivalry is important to them, what's important in terms of parity, not parity, but parity, from a standpoint of we need to play, we got to play Kentucky or Ole Miss or Mississippi State and not have three national championship winning programs every year in our constant. Programs are going to want that too. Not everyone's going to get what they want. That's the bottom line with all of this. No one's going to get, someone might, but not every team can get everything they want. It's going to be a balance of what the television networks want with what the schools want.
Well, and
television network, I should say, with ESPN.
Yeah. This to me is the best possible model given the circumstance of how you come up with a schedule where you're going to over, what is his goal every 2 years? You're playing? Or
every 2 years you would rotate. Yes, playing. You're going to play
through
3. And then the other 12 would rotate every other year. You'd have.
I don't know how else you make this happen if that's your goal, where every other year your program. So every 4 years a program is coming to your stadium that you haven't seen potentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Billy Lucci yesterday said, A&M has not visited Kentucky, and
Georgia has not visited A&M.
Georgia has not,
which
been
would be
to College
a great
Station,
matchup,
which would be awesome, right? Like. those are the – I don't think about it in those terms on a weekly basis on the current SEC schedule. And I don't know how you pull it off with – can you do that and still have divisions? And keep it
probably
even
not.
Where the East teams are playing East teams that determine tiebreakers, right? Like, can you pull that off and still accomplish what they're trying to accomplish on a weekly basis, and not on a weekly basis, on an annual basis with new teams at stadiums?
I don't think so, because to have a division, you got to play every team in your division,
right? To
make it division, to really separate it properly, and that wouldn't happen in this format. One thing that I do not like about what Greg Sankey has said, and he said it some different places, the concept that flex scheduling, the way it's done now, will change. So what's done now, the NFL would love to have this, by the way, throughout the year, I'm sure.
Yes.
The SEC has it, the television networks and the SEC has it great right now in that they wait until 12 days out. So the Monday before the next Saturday, after that Saturday, you find out what network you're on and when you're kicking off in that game. That is done to optimize kickoff time, network, and interest in that game. It helps ESPN now in a big way. Well, Greg Sankey sort of alluded to this. Maybe we'll have flex scheduling with 2 games that we can move from afternoon to night, but they want to move towards before the season kicks, you're going to know when your team's playing every week and on what network. Why does that not make sense? Because you might pick Georgia-Auburn for early November as the ESPN primetime big money game, and Auburn could be 2-7 when they play. And no one's going to want to watch that game. And a game you're not expecting is going to be great, and then you're not going to have that in primetime. A good example is this past year with Tennessee. No one was expecting Tennessee to be in the national championship hunt. Well, once they were, and they start out undefeated, and they beat out, well, guess what? They're in CBS games. They're at night games, no matter who they're playing. That flexibility gives you the best possible TV product.
But I wonder if they're going to select it the same way CBS traditionally has, where on Saturday at 2:30 Central, it's either been Bama or Georgia on the screen.
Well,
mainly.
Here's my guess. When he says 2 games, like right now it's every game. You don't get a kickoff time.
Right.
Until 12 days before. After the first 3 weeks scheduled, then you don't see anything until 12 days before kickoff, and they reshuffle the deck completely. I think what will happen is they will just withhold information on 2 time slots. 2:30 Central, ESPN,
and then the night.
ESPN primetime.
I like that.
Everything else will stay locked into 11 a.m., a 3 p.m. SEC network, a night game on ESPN 2 or whatever. Those 2 will remain open, and the SEC will decide to move games into that or move games into night and then shuffle it that way. So there's less shuffling, but that's better than just, locking everything in. I still like the way it's done now. I don't think it affects attendance that much. The one selling point would be, hey, if I know that Tennessee plays Texas A&M this year, if A&M and Tennessee are going to be played at night in late October or whenever, I'm going to buy a ticket to that game, and that game will sell out quicker. I just don't think the impact of that is that much. Here's the deal. If the game's at 11 a.m. and you know your games are at 11 a.m., they're not going to sell out. It's the worst time to play. So that's going to be the case 12 days out or 12 weeks out.
Unless you're playing Akron, then Tennessee's going to sell that out.
Yeah. And when you beat Florida, they'll sell it out.
Hit us up with your thoughts at Outkick 360. Coming up, a big game for Kentucky tomorrow. We'll explain why as they host Tennessee. Plus, Eric Bieniemy has made up his mind. That's next in Outkick 360.
Welcome into Outkick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
So the higher that number can be, the better you are with the committee. It's really that simple.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really got to lean into the turns.
He's got incredible taste in which media figures he listens to.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
Why are we going through Melania's goods? Don't make Brittany Griner out to be some type freedom fighter. Shouldn't there be a little bit of common sense? Let's roll them, big boy. What do you got?
They want to find someone to be the face of domestic terrorism, and they want it to be a right-wing Trump supporter. Don't let them entrap you into doing something dumb. But they were hyper-rational. They looked at the data, and they said it makes no sense for me to submit to this COVID shot mandate.
Get the shot or you can't go to your brother's wedding. Get the shot or you can't go to your daughter's graduation. Get the shot or else.
It is officially the Eric Bieniemy show in Washington for the Commanders. He's been hired as the offensive coordinator and assistant head coach, with Ron Rivera making that official. He decided he would take that position instead of staying in Kansas City. So now the expectation is Matt Nagy will move into the offensive coordinator role in Kansas City. Bieniemy has full control of the offense now in Washington. Also, another hire, Thomas Brown, is the new offensive coordinator in Carolina. He is the tight ends coach, or was the tight ends coach with the Rams. Go figure. Another McVay assistant gets hired and a chance to step up in the coaching ranks. Chad?
By the way, if Eric Bieniemy lights it up with the Commanders offense and Carson Wentz and doesn't get a head coaching job, it may be racist. I may have to come back and change my stance and say, all right, there's no more excuses now. This guy's lit it up with it being his show completely, with maybe Carson Wentz at quarterback, Taylor Heineke, whoever it is, Sam Howell.
Sam Howell's who's being discussed.
If
yeah,
he lights it up,
who.
If he lights it up with Sam Howell, that dude deserves a head coaching opportunity.
And he'll get it
immediately.
Yeah,
and I agree with that. I think he will get it.
Chad, a big game tomorrow for the Kentucky Wildcats in college hoops.
This game, it's a game featuring the number 10 team in the country in Tennessee versus an unranked team. This game is all about Kentucky. Kentucky, based on what bracketology you look at, is either maybe the last team in the tournament or one of the first four out of the tournament. They can move themselves off the bubble a bit and into the field comfortably. If they win tomorrow, they'll have a sweep of Tennessee. And Tennessee is one of the net rankings, one of the best teams in the country. They will have beaten them in Knoxville, beaten them in Lexington. But this game is all about Kentucky. Tennessee's fine. They're secure. They're going to be a high seed in the tournament. I'm not saying they're not going to go up there and not, want to win and play well. They don't want to get swept by Kentucky. But for the college basketball world, Hutton, from a macro sense, Kentucky not making the tournament is a big deal. This is a big day for college basketball, a big day for Kentucky. It's a must-win for the Wildcats.
Why do we have to wait until the day of to get lines?
It's sometimes the night before they'll come out. College basketball, it's trickier because they don't get as much intel, I think, so they wait until the last minute
strange,
to
though.
release a line.
We can bet on all kinds of stuff, but yet we can't get the college basketball line.
And it's not like college football is any more transparent with injuries.
Right.
I mean, Tennessee's got two starters again that are game time decisions.
Yeah. Okay.
The thought is maybe they're hopeful one of the two will be back for this game, but not both. But neither could be back.
Still no line posted.
That affects the line. Even though they just beat Alabama without them, that will affect the line one way or the other.
You think there's any chance the line is similar to what Tennessee was to Bama and everyone freaks out?
I think Kentucky will be favored. I think it's going to be Kentucky like -2.5. It's going to be a very small line, but Kentucky will be favored.
Because of what's at stake, too.
And it's at home. I mean, Rupp Arena is going to give you 8 points probably for a game. I mean, that home court environment will give you some points.
Chad, great week. Sad day, at least for us. Not for Outkick or Fox, but here in Nashville at our hub. Corey Taylor. We're not losing him with the company, but he is moving to New York due to family obligations. We salute you for that. Corey joins us now, and we give you a toast, Corey. Since you joined us, you've been nothing but great. And hopefully you've enjoyed sitting here and letting us bore you with the sports talk each day as we complain about your trying to get a mic on, cough button, whatever it might be.
You guys, it's a pleasure to be a part of what I guess you could call the Outkick legacy at this point.
There you go.
Remember day one, Hutton, when I was like, where do you live? I'm going to come fix your studio.
And you did.
And we did. And you were like, man, this shit looks I'm sorry.
Exactly.
This looks tight.
Don't worry, you're 3 for 3 now. It's good. Every Outkick employee does it. It's fine.
You came over not once,
we
but
had to make it a perfect sweep.
You were like, this looks tight, and this is good. And I knew that we were going to be like good from there.
You went to Birmingham with Hutton one time
USFL.
Also. You were at the Super Bowl with
the
us.
draft.
USFL draft. We did some hit pieces with them doing it was pretty awesome reporting right
Clark
there.
Lee, interviewed Clark Lee, Super Bowl in Arizona. Corey is a man of many talents. He's a sports fan. He's not the biggest sports fan.
Right.
But I appreciate that you put up with us, Corey.
I'm fans of
talking
you guys,
sports
man.
this long.
Same here.
I'm fans of y'all. It's
same
my
to
friends.
you.
Chad and I have said this. We've said it to you in the past too. You hustle. We love those who hustle. on behalf of anything we're trying, any show's trying to accomplish that day. We appreciate you for that. And you're headed to New York. You're headed to Harlem?
Yeah, I got an apartment today. It was secured in Harlem.
How big is this apartment?
$2,000 big. Like, not that much.
But it's enough for you.
Yeah, it's enough for me. And
Corey can get by.
It's enough to have my little daughter come and my partner and go to the zoo, have a good time.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, I kind of railed against New York media yesterday and said they're not as big time as they think they are when they say that someone can't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
I have to change my stance now because Corey's a part of New York media. So I feel like New York media just got a little bit bigger and better because Corey's going to be a part of it.
I know you guys are going to be back up there, and you just have to promise that we'll connect. Like, when you're in the building, call me.
You'll be in
there.
charge of a night out.
And we'll have another
Outkick 360 night out.
And our remote broadcast that day.
That's
Congrats. We just signed you up for more work. You will both engineer everything we're doing in New York, and you'll be out with us that night.
I just want to say it again. I really appreciate all you guys. Give me 1 second to say thank you, Hutton. Thank you, Chad. Learning with this company has taught me so much. It's helping me right now. Thank you, Maddie. Thank you, Brooke. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Tyler, Dylan, Ryan, Haley, Kylie, Tommy, everybody who's given me a chance to grow and learn. And I just will always take it with me. I appreciate you guys.
You're the man.
Corey, you've been terrific. And thank you for hustling.
You guys.
Thank you for being a friend. We've got a great production crew now all the way around. So we are in a good spot. And it's in large part because of Corey, who now bolts and leaves us.
Chad,
call me when it catches on fire. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it'll happen. Yeah,
we will.
Probably tonight.
Cheers to the weekend, Chad, and what's
Yes.
going to be fun. We get to find out what Adam Sandler's all about tonight on tour.
We'll come back with a full Adam Sandler concert report on Monday and let everyone know the mix of concert and stand-up act, exactly what it was.
Daytona 500, SEC Hoops.
XFL
kickoff.
Genesis Invitational. What will Christine Brennan get mad about next?
Yeah.
So much to discuss.
My guess is nothing because if Tiger's not playing, no one's going to be locked in like that.
Right. What can, Justin Thomas do now?
Maybe, based on the conditions, though, the course is playing much faster, so maybe it can come back a bit. Tiger's won over, and whenever we checked, he was one shot below the cut line currently. That's still the case as they're midway through the second half of round 2. Have a great weekend. We're back at it on Monday. Outkick 360. We start at 3 o'clock Eastern right here across the Outkick Network.
Cheers, everyone.